April 18, 1906, 5:12 a.m. The ground didn't shake. It tore in less than a minute. San Francisco, the jewel of the West, collapsed into rubble. Fires raged for 3 days. When the smoke finally cleared, over 80% of the city was gone. 3,000 dead. 500,000 displaced. The official story calls it a tragedy, a natural disaster. A chapter closed. But that's not the whole story. Because when crews began digging through the wreckage, clearing foundations, hauling debris, preparing to rebuild, they found something that no official report ever fully explained. If you follow the thread, changes everything you thought you knew about this city. Let's start with what the records actually say. The ones that survived. In the months following the earthquake, San Francisco launched the largest urban reconstruction project in American history. Crews worked around the clock. They dug down to bedrock. They cleared what remained of the old city to make way for the new. And in the process, they kept finding things that shouldn't have been there, buried beneath the rubble, beneath the ash, beneath the collapsed buildings, beneath layers of fill that had no business being that deep. Workers began uncovering entire structures, not fragments, not ruins in the usual sense. Intact walls, doorways, windows, storefronts, architectural features that suggested something had been there before the San Francisco anyone knew existed. The official explanation at the time was simple. These were the remains of the old city, buried by the earthquake, buried by the fires. But the workers knew better. The engineers knew better, because what they were finding wasn't debris from 1906. It wasn't rubble from collapsed buildings. It was architecture, finished, complete, designed to face a street that no longer existed at that level. Here's where it gets strange. In at least 5 independent accounts letters, written by workers, field notes from engineers, a single interview given by a crew supervisor, decades later, the descriptions converge on something specific. One worker wrote to his wife, "We dug down through the ash, and there was a whole street below us. Cobblestones, a sidewalk, storefronts, with glass still in the windows, like the city had been built on top of another city." Another account, buried in a private journal, donated to a historical society in 1972, describes crews finding a row of buildings with their second floors at what should have been ground level. The first floors were below grade, not collapsed, not damaged, just underground, as if the ground had risen around them. The engineering reports from the reconstruction mention these discoveries in detached, almost deliberately vague phrases like anomalous structural remnants and pre-existing foundations at unexpected depths. But the raw accounts, the ones never published, tell a different story. They describe workers refusing to go back into certain excavations. They describe supervisors ordering crews to stop talking about what they'd seen. They describe a decision, made quietly and never documented, to simply build over whatever was there and move on. Now, let's be honest about what we're dealing with here. San Francisco, like Seattle, like Chicago, like dozens of cities across America, underwent massive grade-raising projects in the 19th century. The official history says these were for sanitation, for flood control, for modern infrastructure. But it doesn't explain the finish of what they found. Basements don't have storefront windows. Storage spaces don't have decorative cornices. Service corridors don't have cobblestone. Streets and lampposts and sidewalks designed for pedestrians. What the workers in San Francisco uncovered, what the official reports quietly buried, was not a basement level. It was a street level, a complete, intact, fully developed urban landscape, buried beneath the city that replaced it. And here's the question that no one asked in 1906, and that no one asks now: how long does it take for a city to be buried under 20 feet of fill? Not gradually, not over centuries, but in a single generation, in a single disaster, in a single decision to build on top of what was there, rather than excavate it. What did the workers see that made them stop talking? There's a pattern in these accounts, a pattern I've come to recognize after years of digging through archives. The descriptions are precise about some things, and strangely evasive about others. Workers could tell you exactly how deep they dug, exactly what kind of brick they found, exactly how intact the glass was. But when it came to describing the scale of what they found, the sense that they were standing in something larger, something that extended beyond the excavation, something that suggested a city buried in its entirety, their language breaks down. Sentences trail off. Letters end abruptly. Interviews change the subject. One supervisor, quoted in a local newspaper in 1908 and never mentioned again, said this: "We kept digging and kept finding more. It wasn't one building, it was blocks. It was streets." The article cuts off there. The rest of his quote was never printed. The newspaper's archives from that period were destroyed in a later fire. Another account, from a crew foreman whose private memoir was published by his family in 1951 and never distributed widely, describes standing in an excavation on Market Street and realizing that the stone walls on either side of him weren't walls at all. They were facades. They had windows. They had doorways. They had This is the detail that haunts me hitching posts for horses, at a depth where no horse had walked in living memory. So what happened to this evidence? This is where the official record does something I've come to recognize across dozens of cities, across dozens of excavations, across a century of urban development. It narrows. It becomes very specific about the reconstruction, the engineering marvel, the civic triumph, the city rising from the ashes. And it becomes very vague, almost deliberately vague, about what was found in the ashes. The engineering reports from 1906 to 1908 are meticulous. They detail every foundation poured, every block cleared, every cubic yard of fill. But the geological observations, the descriptions of what was actually in that fill, what was beneath it, what the crews uncovered before they poured concrete over it are either absent or reduced to a line or two. Previous structures encountered debris, cleared to bedrock. Nothing about intact storefronts, nothing about buried streets, nothing about the impossible geometry of what they found. The photographs from the reconstruction exist. You can find them in archives, labeled San Francisco Earthquake Clearing Operations. And if you know what to look for, you can see it in the background of some images, partially obscured by debris. What looked like building facades at depths that don't match the rubble above them. Arched windows, stone cornices, the kind of architecture that belongs on a street, not buried beneath one. These photographs were published in engineering journals at the time. Then, they were quietly never mentioned again. The journals remain in university libraries. The photographs remain in archives. No one has ever offered a formal explanation for what they show. Here's where I have to be honest about the limits of what I can prove versus what I can show you. I can't tell you with certainty what was buried beneath San Francisco in 1906. I wasn't there. The official records have been sanitized, lost, or destroyed. The men who saw it with their own eyes are long dead. But I can tell you what the evidence suggests. I can show you the pattern, because San Francisco is not an isolated case. It's not even the most documented case. Seattle, Chicago, Portland, Sacramento, Galveston all raised their streets in the 19th century. All found buried structures beneath the fill. All produced photographs, reports, worker accounts, that were then quietly filed away and forgotten. And the architecture they found, the arches, the cornices, the brickwork, the street layouts looks the same across cities that had no contact with one another. The same proportions, the same materials, the same design language repeated across a continent, buried beneath cities that were supposedly built on empty land. What does that tell you? It tells you that something existed before, something built at scale, something that was buried deliberately, systematically, and then built over. And it tells you that the people doing the burying knew what they were covering up, because they never mentioned it again. Not in official histories, not in commemorative volumes, not in the stories they told about their cities rising from nothing. Let me leave you with this. In 1906, San Francisco burned. The world watched. The city rebuilt. And in the process of rebuilding, crews uncovered something that contradicted the official story of how the city came to be. They found streets beneath streets, buildings beneath buildings, a city beneath the city. The official response was not to investigate. It was not to document. It was to pour concrete, raise the grade, and move on. To bury what had been found and pretend it was never there. Why? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I know what the evidence suggests. I know what it feels like to read these accounts in sequence, to watch the same silence repeat itself across cities, across decades, across the institutional memories of governments that should have no reason to agree on anything. It feels like a door that someone very carefully closed, and somewhere on the other side of it, beneath 20 feet of fill, beneath a century of concrete and steel, beneath the San Francisco we know today, the answer is still there, waiting. If you've read this far, you're someone who wants to know what's actually there. Not what you're told to believe, but what the evidence reveals when you follow it without flinching. Here's what you can do right now. First, look at the photographs. The archives are open. The images from San Francisco's reconstruction, the ones that show buried facades, the ones that were published and then forgotten are waiting for someone to ask the right questions. Go look at them, see for yourself. Second, ask why. Ask why no official history mentions what the crews found. Ask why the engineering reports are precise about everything except the buried structures. Ask why the photographs exist, but no one talks about them. Third, share this. The only thing that has maintained this silence for over a century is the absence of enough people asking the same question at the same time. That's what we're changing. The door was closed a long time ago, but doors, even the heaviest ones, have a way of opening when enough hands press against them. Let's find out what's on the other side.